Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second part of our Contemporary World podcast. To recall the previous lesson that we had, we identified what we meant by contemporary world, and we agreed that this is the world here and now. Now, why is there a need to study the world? The world as a concept is abstract, but our daily experiences and interactions make the world alive and concrete. I mean, you read the news about politics, we transact with our barangay, we deal with our government. But if you step back a little bit to see the world out there, you're actually seeing that it's actually huge, very big out there. For example, you have relatives in other countries working as overseas Filipino workers, or you have foreign friends on Facebook, or foreigners who visit your homes and with them they bring their culture. The media and the internet also are windows to the contemporary world. You watch Spider-Man No Way Home in your phone, and you have probably seen a Netflix movie featuring Korean actors. If you want to know news around the world, you don't even need to watch TV. When you click a friend's post on Facebook, you can see news feeds already. Also, the way we consume is already global by nature. You have eaten in McDonald's, played Mobile Legends, sipped a Starbucks coffee perhaps, or yearn for the new pair of basketball shoes, or maybe owned a China-made gadget. Therefore, you are already a citizen of the world, whether you are aware of it or not. Just by living your life, you automatically think about the contemporary world. This course will be actually your guide. Why do we study the world again? First, studying the outside world is a cure to what we call parochialism, or it is an outlook that is limited to one's immediate community. Parochialism is basically close to being close-minded. In short, we don't want you to be closed-minded because a closed-minded person is only concerned only with his family, his own village, or even his own country. By introducing you to the world, you are able to exercise your imagination and critical thinking and introduce you to unfamiliar ideas and cultures that may spark new interests and concerns. Now, it is my desire personally, that after the course, you're able to become more aware of the places, people, ideas, and cultures that you care about and you value them. This expansion of personal view is the very core of what it means to be a global citizen. Secondly, you need to study the world because it can teach you more about yourself. According to a famous philosopher named Socrates, know thyself. Knowing about other countries allows you to compare your society with others. Now, the experiences of other communities outside our country, the Philippines, may provide solutions to many of the country's current problems, correct? Like how did we deal with the pandemic? How do other nations respond to COVID-19? Now, they may also provide warnings about what not to do. I mean, every country, for example, desires economic growth. It is good if policymakers know what economic models and economic policies is good for our country or are good for our country and what actually fails as well. If you are taking Rizal subject, you would know that even Dr. Jose Rizal, he said that anyone who has learned about the world will be haunted by the ghost of comparisons. Once you know about other societies, he says, you will not be able to look at your own in the same way. You will start comparing and asking various questions. This drive to compare will happen even when you least expect it. The urge is like a ghost that suddenly appears. Now, not the ghosting you are thinking about with your ex-girlfriend, okay? Then finally, you need to study the world because you will be interacting with it. In 2021, an estimated of 676,000 Filipino workers were deployed overseas, reflecting a 69% decrease from the previous year. But let's face it, more and more Filipinos are living and working abroad. And I believe many of you who are listening today are contemplating to work abroad as well, either by choice or by necessity. For those of you who plan to work in another country after graduation, this course can serve as an orientation. Nevertheless, even those who choose to remain in the Philippines must confront the phenomenon of globalization. Many of you will work for foreign companies operating in the country. Now, especially because of the growth of multinational corporations or MNC, that is actually that is also possible. Due to the internet, cheaper travel costs, and larger trade of goods and services, the world will now become more interdependent. Filipinos are increasingly become or we are becoming aware of this interdependence. Now, this interdependence is clearly seen in the phenomenon called globalization. As author Manfred Steger provided, he described the process as scholarly as possible, saying that the expansion and intensification of social relations or human relations and consciousness across world time and across world space. Now, the word expansion means that social networks are created and even multiplied that cross traditional political, economic, cultural, and geographic boundaries. For example, social media like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, they have established connections among people. Another example are international groups or NGO or non-governmental organizations like Doctors Without Borders, UNICEF, Amnesty International, Habitat for Humanity. They connect a more specific group social workers and activists from different corners of the globe. Now, aside from expansion, we also look into the word intensification. We mean that globalization expands, stretches, and accelerates all of these networks. See the difference? Global connections are not just multiplying, but they are expanding. Let's look at Netflix. It is expanding, covering the Philippines through the subscription of foreign movies, right? But it's also intensifying by reaching out to the local films and adding them to their menu of movies. Another example is a strong financial market connecting London and New York. Because of electronic trading, the volume of that trade increases exponentially, since traders can now trade more at higher speeds. Thus, the connection is accelerating. Thus, the world becomes more financially integrated. The intensified trading network between London and New York may expand and stretch to cover more and more cities. Another example is when China committed itself to the global economy in the 1980s. From then on, Shanghai steadily returned to its old role as a major trading post. So people traded in Shanghai because it opens itself to borders, it opens itself to business. The final attribute of this definition by Steger is that it refers to the way people perceive time and space. In simple words, people begin to feel that the world has become a smaller place, and distance has collapsed from thousands of miles to just a mouse click away. You see? Now, you can already email a friend in another country and get a reply instantaneously, right? And as a result, we begin to perceive distance as less consequential. I mean, we don't consider distance really as a big deal. And other examples are cable TV and the internet. I would understand some students have pointed out negative effects of globalization like an even distribution of wealth, local products being at the mercy of importations. All these criticisms are actually pointing out to another phenomenon, which is called globalism. Globalism is an ideology, it's a belief, and it simply means the uneven distribution of wealth across the globe. For example, in our country, we are now facing a shortage of pork, baboy, due to African swine fever or ASF. But since our Department of Agriculture has not given attention to our local farmers and producers, we are resorting to importation, which is bad for our local economy. Personally, I would say that if people are changing their view or relying more on imported goods rather than strengthening our own production, then globalism can be reduced as well. One anthropologist, namely Arjun Appadurai, said that there are different kinds of globalizations, and he calls them escapes. Escapes. For example, an ethnoscape refers to the global movement of people. Mediascape is about the flow of culture. Technoscape refers to the circulation of mechanical goods and software. Financescape denotes the global circulation of money. And Idioscape is the realm where political ideas move around. Although they intersect at one point, these various scapes have different logics. Simply put, Appadurai's argument is that there are multiple globalizations, and depending on what is globalized, be it culture, technology, goods, politics, or money, you will look at globalization from different way. You understand? So for example, if we talk about goods, we talk about globalizing the economy leading to a global economy. Now, and global economy has tremendously changed for the past decades. What is it? What is global economy? The global economy actually refers to the interconnected worldwide economic activities that take place between multiple countries. Take note, multiple countries and not just between two countries. These economic activities can have either a positive or negative impact on the countries involved. These changes will have effect not only on the flow of goods and services between countries, but also the movement of people. So when we speak of global economy, we will discuss the following characteristics. First, globalization, which means the integration of economy, society, and culture. Second, there is international trade, which is an impact of globalization, a direct impact. When we speak of international trade, it refers to the exchange of goods and services between different countries. And it has also helped to specialize in products which they have a comparative advantage in. Third, there is international finance, which means money can be transferred at a faster rate between countries compared to goods, services, and people, making international finance one of the primary features of a global economy. So, if you're familiar with currency exchange rates, remittances, and monetary policies, those are the elements of international trade. Now, number four, we have global investment, also called foreign direct investment or FDI. I know some students were commenting about FDI being a direct result of globalization. Now, FDI refers to an investment strategy that is not constrained by geographical boundaries. This is evident in companies investing money in corporations in certain countries, especially in developing countries. Why is this global economy important? We can understand the importance of global economy by looking at it in relation to emerging markets. First, global economy is important at a micro and macro level. There is an increase in the world's population, you know very well, we are increasing, and people make decisions on what to purchase, why they purchase or buy, and how this purchasing power affects the price, the demand, the supply of goods in the markets. We also call this microeconomics. When we study economics as a whole and its flow, then that is what we call the macroeconomics. Global economy is important because of positive financial and economic projections based on capital productivity, based on demographic trends. For example, the gross domestic product or GDP. When we talk about the GDP, it's simply the measure of the country's economic output in a year in a country, considering the value of goods and services in the country. Now, according to emerging markets economic forecast for 2009 or 2019, particularly focus economics, according to them, the economy is set to increase by 7.5 in India, 7.5%, 6.6% in the Philippines, 6.3% in China, 5.3% in Indonesia, 5.1% in Egypt, and so on and so forth. So there is really a projection of increase of productivity. Now, who controls the global economy? Many people think that the global economy is controlled by governments of the largest economies in the world, but this is a common misconception. Although governments do hold power over countries' economy, it is the big banks and large corporations that control and essentially fund these governments. This means that the global economy is dominated by large financial institutions. Now, what are the effects of global economy? Every country in the world, in some way, is affected by things that happen in what may seem to be at times due to the influence of the global economy. And a good example of this is the economic impact when the United Kingdom withdrew from the European Union in 2020. The main cause of these effects is economics, based on the production and exchange of goods and services. Restrictions on the import and export of goods and services can potentially endanger the economic stability of countries who choose to impose too many restrictions. The purpose of international trade is similar to that of trading within the country. However, they differ from one currency or currency and barriers, imposing barriers, and depending upon their um, restrictions, depending upon their products as well. Now let's go to the last part. The benefits if you have this global economy. So again, there are benefits if you have a global economy. Number one, free trade. Free trade is an excellent method for countries to exchange goods and services. It also allows countries to specialize in the production of those goods. So for Philippines, we are the number one importer, exporter of coconut, cacao, no? Because we specialize these products, and we can export this one to other countries who have none of these, or they lack these types of products. Number two, there's movement of labor. Increased migration of the labor workforce is advantageous for the recipient country as well as for the workers. If a country is going through a phase of high unemployment, then workers can look for jobs in other countries. Number three, there is increased economy of scale. When we specialize goods production in most countries or in our country, it can lead to advantageous economic factor, such as lowering our cost. Take for example, China. Since they are producing a lot of products in volume, meaning to say in big volume, uh, that is what we meant the economy of scale. Then they can lower the price. See, nga nina, kung mupakyaw ka say you want to buy manga. Oh, you want to buy manga. So kung daghan imong paliton nga manga, mas ubos ang presyo. So it's like that is what we meant by economy of scale. Then we also have increased investment due to the presence of global economy. It has become easier for countries to attract short-term and long-term investment. Investments in developing countries like Philippines go a long way in improving the economies. So you have there free trade, movement of labor, increased economy of scale, and then increased of investment if you are part of the global economy, which we are. Aside from these factors, the following factors can also contribute to global economy. What are these? First, you have natural resources. Second, infrastructure. You have bridges, you have building. That's why the build maybe is a good move by the government now in order to attract more investors. Number three, you have population. In the Philippines, we have a very, very young population. It's a working age. The people are very young. Number four, you have labor. Number five, you have human capital, meaning to say people can work. And lastly, technology. So for today's activity, for your attendance, please comment the following number for your attendance. Comment number 1 for more explanation. Comment number 2 for more examples. And comment number 3 if you want to have exam next meeting. Lastly, may I remind you to guard your mental health as always. Please drink plenty of fluid, water, get 8 hours of sleep every day, every night. And you may go out and play sports whenever you can. And to take care of yourself and take care of your mental health always. Thank you very much and see you next time.